All right, lecture number 9, Feudalism and Rise of Nation States. We're going to just take a quick glimpse at the rise of England and France. We'll briefly mention Spain. We're going to come back to these particular nation states, as I call them, or because we had city states. Remember, we had city states, right, in Greece, and Rome was a city state, and it made itself an empire and all that. And we'll come back to England, France, and Spain at the beginning of Unit 3. We'll do a bit more of a comprehensive study, but certainly I'll mention a little bit of Spain. We're going to actually take a little bit of a tour of Spain from the 15th century, 14th, 15th century in there, right? And but our focus when we get to nation state building will be England and France, born out of this out of the feudal system, if you will. So the slide in front of you, I put together myself. It's nice, and this slide demonstrates to us the structure of feudal society in Europe, and we see some influences here. Certainly, the big outside influence in Western Europe and Northern Europe is that there is really, as we said before in previous lectures, a real lack of centralized authority. All right, that could hold back perhaps outsiders, or perhaps find a way to bring everybody together. Again, you think about Rome, you think about that unity of Roman citizenship and Roman infrastructure. So, it again, the disarray will build build into this system where nobles, in essence, will fight for other nobles' land and vice versa, and try to build almost like a video game, almost like Farmville. Farmville was Farmville, right? And then you had the city one, and I know I played the Simpsons one. Yeah, that tapped out. It was good, and I tried to get back into it. And I just So and I'm hooked on Toon Blast anyway. That oh god, it's like cigarette smoking for me. I don't smoke cigarettes, but that I need a break. I need a fix. I go play some Toon Blast. Level 35. Hang on. I got the phone right here. That's scary. What am I at? Hang on. It should just open up, dude. What are you doing? Oh man, I gotta put in the code. Okay. Where am I at? What level? 35, 38 if you're keeping score at home. Okay. Yeah, it's bad. Stay away. Okay, so again, our notes indicate to us on our first slide that big outside influences, Vikings from Scandinavia as an example, and other various groups in the post-Roman Western world would create this system of protection and isolation. All right, and again, I'm just going to flip to the map on the second slide, and again, you can see that between 700 and roughly 1000 AD, that Western Europe was under regular invasions from, again, the Muslims, the Magyars. They're from modern day Hungary, the Magyar Republic as it's known, and certainly the Vikings from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, right, Scandinavia, right. They were looking for an IKEA store to return the Hergenbergen table. I know. I'm going to get a phone call from 3 embassies. The Norwegian, the Swedish, and the Danish embassy are going to call me and say, it's not funny, please stop doing the joke. Okay, right. So, yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. Okay. Anyway, so you can see that Northern Europe and Western Europe is under constant siege, right, from these outside groups. One of the things I do want to mention while we are looking at this map, if you've ever heard the phrase, you pay through the nose. All right, when you pay through the nose for something, it generally means that you paid way too much money for an item, or usually you hear it like you might say it when you go to the automobile repair shop, and they charge you so much money, an arm and a leg, right? Since we're on body parts, and but the term, I paid through the nose for that. You paid dearly for that. That comes from when the Vikings had invaded Ireland back in the 900s, 800s, 900s, and when they established themselves as the rulers in various towns along the Irish coast, they instituted a tax on the locals, and if you didn't pay the tax, they cut your nose off. All right, so the saying became, you pay through the nose, for that. So that's the answer. Where it comes from. You pay through, So, ow, that hurts. Okay, let me go back to number one. No, it's wrong way, Corrigan. There you go. Okay, all right, there you go. Wrong way, Corrigan. Do you know about him? He was supposed to fly to Ireland. It was like in the early 1930s. He was an aviator, like Lindbergh, and he was supposed to fly to Ireland solo, nonstop, and he ended up flying to California instead. He was known as Wrong Way Corrigan. Okay, right. That's God. Now you're making fun of the Irish. No, I'm not. Okay. Oh no. Anyway, yeah. Okay. So out of this outside, these outside attacks, these marauders, you begin to see throughout Western Europe a system that becomes known as the feudal system. All right, and again, the landowners, the nobles, the lords, who owned, would build basically fortified castles, and to protect themselves, their family, their court, and certainly anybody else that might work for them. Certainly below that, you have the knights. They're going to provide the protection, right? The clergy, they'll provide spiritual comfort, and they'll provide connection to the Catholic hierarchy back in Rome, and certainly within the local areas, the diocese, perhaps the bishops, archbishops, cardinals, whatever. And then certainly on the bottom of the system are the serfs, right? These are the poor farmers, the tenant farmers, if you will, who were forced to rent land and pay for protection from the nobles, all right? So certainly, again, and this is born largely out of that, the lack of a central entity, all right, as well. Now, just to show you, this is the Alcazar at Segovia, in Segovia, Spain, and again, we'll talk more about the Spanish and the rise of Spain as a nation state when we get to Unit 3. And again, I'll have a study for you to do and some questions to answer for your notes. But certainly the Alcazar was the seat of Catholic royal power in Spain up until the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492, and then they would move their seat of power, if you will, out of Segovia to Madrid. But it was here in Segovia. And Segovia is about an hour's drive north of Madrid, or if you take the AVE, the high-speed train, it's a 30-minute ride out of central Madrid, out of the central station in Madrid. I know there's another name for it. I can't. It's Atocha. I think it's Atocha. There's 2 stations in Madrid. I think it might be the Atocha station. Anyway, we drove from Madrid to Segovia. No, that is not our car. It parked there in the upper left picture. We took the bus. Yeah, you take the bus. Once you get into town, we took the bus from the hotel. The bus system in cities, European cities in particular. Oh my God, it's great. And Segovia is really not a big city. I know that my friend Jesus, who's from Segovia, would say otherwise. He said, "No, Segovia is a great city." So yeah, that's Jesus. Anyway, no, and the Jesus is not in the picture either. He's not. I have him in other pictures, but we'll get to him later. Okay. Anyway, the Alcazar it's a typical medieval, feudal style castle. There's a moat. It's built on a cliff, if you will, which gives it even more protection from invaders. As a matter of fact, if you were to go through that main entrance, you'd walk right over the drawbridge into the castle keep, if you will, and inside it's a absolutely well kept artifact, and I think it's on the UNESCO list of places, as is the aqueduct in Segovia that we saw at the end of Unit 1, right, with Rome. And certainly in the lower left, you've got the thrones for the king and queen, right, of Catholic Spain. And to me, as I was trying to tell my mother, because my mother was on this trip with us to Spain, and she left her hearing aids at home. So the whole trip was, Ma, over here, Ma, what are you doing? It's crazy. Anyway, so anyway, I was explaining to my mother that the most important room in a medieval palace was the bedroom. All right. Certainly, that's where the heirs are conceived. All right, we know that. And certainly the fact that when families are married into one another, it's not for love. It's for political purposes. It's for gaining territory, or gaining an advantage, or gaining wealth, whatever it may be. And the bedroom is really, is the real seat of power. All right, and the eminence of power in a feudal system. So. Certainly there you go. So again, that's why I use these photos. Again, we'll come back to Spain later on. I'm not trying to diss Spain. Okay. So please, if you're a fan of Spain, viva España. Right. Okay. Right. There you go. All right. So let's go to our next slide. And this slide demonstrates, it takes that triangle that we saw, our pyramid, and it kind of flips it. All right. And it shows us this, what we call the cycle of manorialism, the idea that the feudal system kind of feeds on itself. All right. And beneath those nobles, we have the clergy, we have the knights, and we have the farmers, the serfs. Right. And those who pray, the clergy, they pray for the farmers to nourish them and the warriors to protect them. Right. And then the farmers, the serfs, ask for salvation through prayer and protection from the warriors, right? To get protection, right? They're asking for protection. They're not like the knights are out to kill them, right? We'll get to that later, right? And then certainly those who fight, the knights, right, are they are nourished by the farmers and certainly forgiven by the clergy for the horrors of battle. And again, one of the things I'll mention here, certainly. The knights, in general, these were the really rough and tough guys. I mean, they physically, they were tough, and certainly they would have no problem, laying waste to somebody. And one of the things that the nobility throughout Europe, we think of England in particular, but even in France as well and other areas of Europe, that nobles, in essence, wanted to educate their knights on the idea of what was called chivalry. All right, that you can be a warrior, you can go out and kill the enemy, but that's where you draw the line. After that, you're going to help the damsel in distress. You're going to help the poor. You're going to help the children. You're going to protect them. To protect the innocent. Right? That they had to learn that. They didn't know it would. What do you mean it's not okay to slaughter 100 kids? What do you mean? No, you can't. It's not okay. So yeah, they were taught. In essence, they were taught to be chivalrous. And as Bugs Bunny used to say, chivalry is not dead. Right? Okay. So there you go. All right. So a quick diagram there. of your typical castle. And again, the Alcazar in Segovia, it fits this as well. Again, you could see castles, and whether they are intact or in ruins throughout Western Europe, and certainly when you travel, you'll do that. Actually, darn, you know what? I'll make sure I'll throw in my pictures from the Tower of London. I forgot that because that's a castle. That's right. Darn it! Why was I thinking of Spain? Right. So I'll throw them up, before the next lecture. I'll just kind of throw them in and go here. Here's the Tower of London. Right. Yeah, that was cool too. The Tower of London was pretty cool too. Anyway, so there you go. Now, and again, one of the things that's extremely intriguing about feudalism is that even with this disjointed system of nobles and controlling various lands and territories, at some point, one of the nobles will end up gaining enough land to be able to control the other nobles. It's what happens in England, and it's what happens in France. Eventually, it's what happens in Spain. So when we look at England, we think of the two primary or three primary peoples, if you will, that comprised England prior to 1066. There were the Angles, right? Like an angle, like a triangle. Okay, right. The Saxons. All right, and then I mentioned this last time, the Jutes, right? Everybody forgets about the Jutes. Okay, did you say Jutes? Jutes, those two Jutes over there. Okay, right. You said Utes, right? The Utes. Remember that? My cousin Vinny. Anyway, but we know that 1066. We know that William, who was a Norman, would sail across the English Channel and defeat the forces of the Angles and the Saxons, and make himself the king of England. All right, and certainly uniting in essence the Angles and the Saxons under what was Norman rule, and eventually they're all enveloped into English, the English populace, if you will, right? And it's in England we see the development of certainly of a monarchy, just like other areas. For instance, Germanic tribes used a monarchy. Whether it's we mentioned the king, the Franks. We had like Charlemagne and Charles Martel and right, Clovis. Don't forget about Clovis, right? Anyway. In England, one of the things that we see develop, we see the slow development of a parliamentary government and attempts to try to limit the power of the monarchy. Usually, again, this limitation of the power of the monarchy is done really with the nobility. Again, and every noble is a potential king. You have to look at it from that perspective. So for them, it made perfect sense to try to limit the power of the most powerful noble, right? They're all landowners, but the king controls most a good amount of the land. I mean, even today, Queen Elizabeth II is the largest landowner in the British Isles, right? So, but she's really nice because she lets people use that land, not to live on, but to enjoy, So yeah, so that she's a cool lady. Yeah, she's a cool lady. I'm gonna miss her. I know she's in her 90s, and gotta prepare for that one. That's gonna be a big one when that happens. But and will be interesting to see who's next in line. I think it's William. I think it's William. William and Kate, right? They're next. Harry's out. Harry's like, I'm done. He pulled who was the king who I can say it, abdicated in the mid 1930s, and then his younger brother. Did you ever see the King's Speech? Come on, you people have seen it. It's a great film. It was Edward, and he became the what was his title? I can't remember. See, I'm on the fly right now. So let's come back to the notes. Right. So one of the things we see, and I wanted to bring this up, is that in England they created shires. They later on they would call them counties. I think in some areas they still call them shires. Like there was Hampshire, there was Lincolnshire, right? There you go, Buckinghamshire, right? I'm not making this stuff up, people. I know you think I do sometimes, but I'm not. And the nobles hired reeves to protect the king's land. All right, and that was done under, again, it says WC. WC does not stand for water closet. I know if you've traveled through Europe and you're like, where's the bathroom? And you see WC all over the place. Like, I don't know where the bathroom. That's the bathroom, the water closet, right? WC. Under William the Conqueror, William would have the nobles hire out reeves. And these reeves, they would ride around each of the shires. Again, there would be one reeve per shire, and they would ride around and they would in essence protect the king's lands. Make sure that there was no poaching or hunting and things like that, or whatever. Or squatting. Squatters' rights, things like that. Squatters. So, and they became known as shires reeves. It's where we get the term sheriff. Right, the sheriff. Right. So we have the Suffolk County Sheriff. Right, and certainly, they can enforce law. They can enforce warrants if it's in their purview, but they can also deal with property issues as well. So there you go. So they kind of still do what they were initially created to do. Protecting property. Right, there you go. You have the creation of legal precedent, common law, if you will. Under King Henry I. That's why it says, hi, right, Henry I. Right? See, there's a method to my madness, right? And the idea that legal precedent, or the Latin term stare decisis, right, in essence, law is built upon itself, all right, so that there's consistency in enforcing law and consistency in decisions about the law or about an individual who's broken the law. Right, so the idea of legal precedent, common law, right, and then also under King Henry I, was established a royal accounting office, right. The guy who doesn't hold the checkbook, but he watches over the government's accounts, and that's the Exchequer. I love that name, Exchequer. Sounds like a former hockey player, who was really not known for scoring, but would go out and perhaps fight. Anyway, I move on. I'm going to stop. Okay, then you have trial jury. That's Henry II, right? And grand jury, right? Were established under King Henry II. And Henry II's, one of his sons, John I, and he'd be the only King John, by the way, was coerced to sign a document called the Magna Carta, which would limit the power of the king to tax, that the king could not institute a tax without the consent of nobles. All right, so again, the nobles exerting their influence as well. And then certainly by the 14th century, you have the development of Parliament. You have the House of Lords. That's going to be the landowners, right? The nobles, and then the House of Commons. These are going to be commoners, right, that are elected to represent and make laws as well. Okay, and then you look at France, and certainly France goes in a different direction in developing its government. Overall, we see that really France's political power is vested in the monarch, in the king. Yes, they would develop an Estates General and a French Assembly, which was limited in its power under the nobility. All right, and again, we'll get deeper into that when we get into Unit 3. And then certainly, again, you can't examine Unit 2 and England and France and the eventual breakdown of feudalism without looking at the 100 Years' War. Now, I'm not going to spend 100 years on this. As a matter of fact, if I give you 2 minutes on this, that's pretty good. Oh, I see champagne. Oh, I'm in. Who's in? Oh, I see bourbon. Oh, Bourbon, I'm in. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Oh, and I have that wonderful pic. I have that photo. Shoot, you see, every time I build my notes, I keep thinking, oh, I could have used that photo. I have a photograph of you see Brittany, okay, not Brittany in the class, but Brittany on the map, right? Brittany, right? When we were flying back from Italy, it was a gorgeous day. It was an absolutely gorgeous day, and we flew up across from Naples up across southern France and then up the the French Atlantic coast. And then as soon as I'm looking down because I'm on the right side of the aircraft. And I see, yeah, we're getting there. And sure enough, I'm like, there it is. There's the last, piece of land before you head out over the Atlantic. And I have a beautiful photo of Brittany from 37,000 feet. And then after that, the captain announced that the lavatory tanks were full. You can't make this. We had to land in Bangor, Maine, and have the lavatory tanks drained out. I mean, and I know some people ask me, well, why don't they just dump them? You could, but they can only dump them in an emergency like that. Yeah, they can't arbitrarily just pull the door open and let the stuff fall out. It's environmentally unsound. So we had to land in Bangor, Maine for about an hour and a half, and yeah, it was not cool. It was not cool. But the 100 Years' War, coming back to the 100 Years' War, this was a war that, again, when you look at the map of France, and that's what you want to focus on, because France was not the France that we know of in terms of boundaries of more recent history. If you look in the small map where it says, and even you can even see it in the large map on the left, but the small map says France in 1337, you see a large sliver of green, and that green was under English control. And even prior to that, all right, through what we would call the feudal age in Europe, say from 600 AD, 700 AD to roughly almost 1400, that the English controlled large tracts of land on French soil. And again, I'm putting up a short reading, for you on Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Eleanor's a big part of that. She's born of French nobility. She married a French king, and then she married an English king, Henry II. And certainly as a result of that marriage, Henry gained lots of land in France, including Eleanor's land, the Aquitaine, which is it's the green area. It's in the lower left-hand corner of the southwest corner of France. Again, if you look at the map, big map on the left, you can see the Aquitaine stretches from Poitou all the way down to almost the Spanish border, down by Navarre, right? By Navarre, right? You can see that. Large tracts of land as well. All right, and as this conflict would continue, again, for roughly 115 years or so, 116 years, France would slowly regain or gain territory back. And by the end of this conflict, we see that France is united, all right, and certainly would be a much more formidable opponent against the English, and again, you can come back to Agincourt. There are some key battles, and the archers, the English archers at Agincourt, and defeating the French, knights, a bunch of guys shooting bows and arrows, and pretty nasty stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of backstories on there. All right, so I will not forget. I will Tower of London photo. I'll show you that picture from 37,000 feet of Brittany, right, the northwestern France, just before we're about to turn over the Atlantic and not be able to go to the bathroom for 3 hours. You can't make this stuff up, people. You can't. Okay, short lecture. I got one more coming your way for this unit of study. You guys, see you later.